Oi palen save lama rinpoche dage chivo pende den shula tajin chimpu gome jisunte kuzon tu jing adrup sadu son oi ning to chimpu payo len mandru Lodra Jemba Chugun Denisi Drupa Jemba Chamdra Chiyantun Loza Jemba Shabla Solwandip Nudu Jemba Kunda Seneje Kaje Jemba Lama Nyepaze Sundru Jemba Drupe Jasensu Repa Jemba Shabla Solvandip Tekpa Jemba Rikcho Yonsuse Shaja Jemba Topang Undujur Tinde Jemba Kadanyam Padal Nikom Jemba Shabla Solvandip Tamba Namla Gupe Satabtu Drupju Tensen Chonam Shabten Jing Temparin Chojo Jepadang Nit Temadil Tembasho Jewa Kuntu Yanda Lamadang Tame Chuji Pala Long Chujing Sadang Lamji Anten Absone Doje Changi Gop Nyoto Sho Oi Sanje Chudang Soji Chonam La Shanju Badu Dani Chab Suji Dagi Jin Soji Be Sunam Ji Drola Penje Sanje Drupa Sho Sanje Chudang Soji Chonam La Shanju Badu Dani Chab Suji Dagi Jin Soji Be Sunam Ji Drola Penje Sanje Chudang Soji Chonam La Shanju Badu Dani Chab Suji Dagi Jin Soji Be Sunam Ji Drola Penje Sanje Drupa Sho Semchen Tamje Deva Dang Deve Judang Dempa Juji Dunga Dan Dunga Ji Judan Dewa Jujik Dunga Mepe Dewa Damba Dang Mindal Wa Jujik Nyering Chadan Dan Delve Tonyom Chempola Nepa Jujik Oi Chatsa Wadan Chujing Shakpadang Jesu Yerang Kushin Salvaye Kewa Chunse Dagi Chisapa Tamje Dagi Chanjuk Chimo. So, good afternoon to all of you, and today is the first of this course. So there's a few things I have to tell you as we start. I have to give you a sort of introduction before we really get around to talking about the course itself. So, of course, first of all, when we listen to Dharma, we should always try and have the motivation of bodhicitta. And this whole course is about bodhicitta in one way. Then some of you may not know what is bodhicitta. So hopefully today we will talk about what is bodhicitta, definition of bodhicitta, the categories of bodhicitta. So what we said in the introduction to the course is that it's about bodhicitta, the benefits of bodhicitta, and the 6 perfections. So these are the things that we're meant to cover in the next 7 weeks. But this is like a huge topic. We may or may not cover all of it. I'm not sure. I think it's better we just sort of go whatever feels natural, and we will see how far we get. You might not manage the perfection of wisdom in this course. You might not manage even the perfection of meditation in this course. We don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to say that there's not a very rigid outline for the course, but what I was hoping to go through today, so talk about a few things about listening to the Dharma, because here we have all these hybrid, as they're called, hybrid courses. You are one half of another half. There's another. Actually, you're 1/3, and there's 2/3 online. So people have become very familiar, very used to listening online. So I want to talk a little bit about this thing of listening to the Dharma, how we listen to the Dharma, both online and in person. And then just give you an introduction to the course itself, the text, the Shantideva who wrote the text, and then hopefully today we will start on the actual text itself. Yeah, but this is not going to be a course like on the Bodhicharyavatara. It will be like skimming the very, very surface. And I did run a course on the Bodhicharyavatara, I think it was 2017, 2018, and it went on and on and on. And it actually, I was looking back in the dates, and I think it was about 1.5 years, which is actually not long at all. So I'm glad to see some of you were on it. It's not long at all, but of course it's a lot of commitment for people. We don't know where will we be in 1 year from now. What will we be next month? We hardly even know at the moment. So making commitments, I've seen, is very, very difficult for people. And so I thought, well, how far can we stretch? How long a course should I do? Okay, and I have also some plans already in my diary, and so, 7 weeks, this is it. Will people be able to commit to 7 weeks? Even that is a long stretch for most people. So, to start off with, maybe I should say to you that by signing your name on that dotted line out at the reception, you have agreed to come for the next 7 weeks every Saturday. And I told Tom, you can give them black marks or you can give them red marks. You can give them a dubious, you can say missing, hasn't come for, you can write whatever you want. But really what I'm hoping is you will all get stars. At the end of it you will have 5 stars because you will have attended everything. That's what I'm asking of you. I'm really asking you in return for me sitting here every day, and also I'll do my preparation. Please, in return for that, make the commitment to come and attend for the next 7 weeks. Because otherwise I get very sad. And I feel very discouraged. And I think my courses must be so bad because they're dropping like flies. And, there's something happening about listening to Dharma that, it's very important, I think, for us to listen to Dharma. For one thing is, we have to recognize how important Dharma is. And of course, if you don't have that feeling, then I can understand if you don't come. But in order for us to commit, I suppose we have to have some understanding of what the Dharma can do for us. What is a Dharma? How much can it help us? What does it mean in my life? If we have a sense of Dharma being really something very, very precious, then we will do our utmost to make it central in our life, isn't it? Even if it's not like the center for you, might be moving a little bit closer to the center. You might have several pillars. You might have, of course, everybody has different commitments. You have your family, you have your responsibilities, your jobs, you have your, I don't know what else, maybe your parents and things you have to look after, your children. So there are several pillars in your life that you cannot just move them out of the way and say, move over. Now Dharma's taking over, get out, like sort of the whole roof collapses. We can't do that, right? Nobody says you should do that. But what the Dharma is about is developing inner stability, developing inner happiness, developing inner strength, developing some kind of focus so that whatever happens in our lives and that we have no control of, whatever happens, we will be able to sort of surf those waves, and hopefully with time, as this bodhicitta grows, we will develop much, much more than that. You know, bodhicitta is this union of compassion and wisdom. That's what bodhicitta is. Bodhicitta is the motivation saying, I want to reach freedom. If we call like enlightenment, it's such like a very foreign word, very far. We would say freedom from suffering. I want to develop freedom from suffering so I can benefit others. That's a key thinking in bodhicitta. It's not only one, only the other. It's both. And we'll look more at that. But so if that isn't important, what is? Because that's what we're trying to do. Develop inner happiness, freedom from suffering, all these different things. So I'm just sort of haven't even started yet about this listening, but this is something that I would like all of you to think about, because for the benefit of all of you in the group, and this is the same online, I'm also asking all the people online, please stick with it, because 7 weeks out of your life is nothing. It's like a blinking of the eye of your eyes. It's like a drop in the ocean. And if we cannot give that time to Dharma, I think we will not have much benefit. We know that anything we are going to engage with, anything we want a result from, it needs commitment from our side. So it's both online and in person. That's all I'm asking you to please commit, because that is good for the whole group. Because if one person, numbers go down, then it's just discouraging for everybody. But what I want to say is also what we have been taught from some of the major texts, like what Drupal Rinpoche and Samiling was talking very much about this importance of attendance. He says that if we don't have that commitment, like when we have the opportunity and we don't take that opportunity, it's like we are bypassing that, and we are losing it. It may not come again. It's saying that the text is saying, like sort of karmically, that if you have a potential there, a potential situation, and all these different conditions come together, like having a seed, but you just leave that seed, you don't plant it, you leave it on a shelf somewhere. Like we know how it goes with seeds, that after, maybe even next year, a few years lying on a damp shelf, it will have rotted. It will be gone. Nothing will come of it. So he taught very much that if we don't make use of opportunities for study and practice, then those opportunities may not come there in the future. But so what I would like to say, particularly for the people online, is that I know that many of you are not close to Samyas in terms of like physical distance. You're far, you're in other countries, and it's wonderful. That's a positive thing that's come out of this lockdown and going online and all of that, is that we can connect in different ways all around the world, and that is really wonderful. But so what we all have to be aware of when attending Dharma teachings online is that we should try and maintain a similar focus as we have when we are in person. And I think there is a difference, because I have observed it myself. Sometimes I have been on different meetings, I have been on other also Dharma teachings. Like if you listen to them on your own, before you know it, you are like multitasking. You pick up something there and you had, oh yes, you forgot about that, and then who knows what else, like if you don't have your camera on, I don't know if you're drinking tea while you're listening, or I actually heard that one person had been lying down and resting while listening to the Dharma. Now, if that person is really ill, that's okay, but it's like the focus goes. So I think those of you who are online, you just need to be really, really careful not to lose the focus. Don't get stuck on being online only. And try, because it becomes half-hearted. It's so easy not to pay attention. So that's all I wanted to say really about that. I think it's enough, otherwise you're going to start to feel like I'm telling you off. But these are actually important points, because, so let's go on to then, how do you listen to the teachings? And these are, of course, things that are mentioned, like when we say at the beginning of the talk, and this is something I'll only talk about today, not the following weeks, but what, like Jamgon Kongtrul the Great said, and what, some of the other, like Padampa Sangye, Vasubandhu, all the different great Gyaltse Rinpoche, all these great masters who have written texts that are written hundreds of years ago, but they're still studied today by all the great masters as being the authentic teachings on Dharma. The reason everyone studies all these great ancient texts is because they're authentic and they have been proven to be the Buddha's teachings. But what they all say is how they talk about at the beginning. How do we listen to the Dharma? So I'm not going to go through all of them. Just mention one thing. It says, Jamgon Kongtrul, he says in the Great Path of Awakening, it says, if you are inattentive, you're like a vessel turned upside down. If you're forgetful, you're like a vessel that is leaking. And if you are, if your mind is full of afflictions or like lots of distractions, but distractions especially based on attachment, aversion, anger, jealousy, all of the kleshas, if your mind is caught up in thinking about all of that, you're like a vessel that is poisoned, filled with poison. So whatever you put into that container, it becomes mixed with poison. It's like when you are receiving Dharma, you are the vessel. If your mind is full of poison, you're gonna, I've heard this before, you're gonna be, if your mind is negative, it is not good to mix the Dharma with negativity. It becomes impure. If you're very, very distracted, distracted through the senses, like you're not really listening, and you don't gain anything from it. Nothing is retained. Just like if you are a leaking container, it's like a superficial way of listening to the Dharma. So instead, he says, we should be like a yak grazing on the hillside, non-stop. They're like just going. They never stop. When we study the Dharma, we should have that appetite for Dharma. Okay. So that's why we do the prayers at the beginning, right? We do the prayers. We pray to the lineage at the beginning. We say, Mapa, Milarepa, Kampopa. All the great masters, please think of me. May I follow in your footsteps. And then we say, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And then we chant the four immeasurables. May all beings have happiness and be free from suffering. These prayers are so that our mind can be placed in that. So it's like reminders. We just have to remember and think about it. So, this text let's look at then the Bodhicharyavatara a little bit, like get a sort of, and Shantideva, life of Shantideva. So it's a Mahayana text by Shantideva, who was like from the 8th century, a long time ago. Seems kind of long time ago, isn't it? Even though, in one way, it's not that long ago. You think how far 100 years can be gone. I don't know how old all of you are, but like if you were 50, it's like half a century. So from the 8th century, it's not that long ago. Few generations. We tend to think of it as a really long time ago. But what is worth remembering, the language is a little bit, sometimes I find the translation can be a little bit, I wouldn't say stale, but like some of the words in English are a bit, they don't ring so well, especially I think in English. If you talk about sin, for example, that doesn't ring well in all of our ears, right? Instead of negative actions. But so sometimes we have to use a little bit of like a translation license. But what we have to remember is that the Dharma is timeless. The Dharma is utterly timeless. There is no old-fashioned Dharma. And why? Why is there no old-fashioned Dharma? Say 2,500 years ago the Buddha taught the Dharma. Why? It could have gone out of date by now. Everything goes out of date, doesn't it? All the philosophers, someone else comes up with another theory. They come up with another trend. Because it's about our mind. It's about our mind. It's fresh. It's about right here and right now. It's about everything we experience in the moment. It's about my personal experience and my personal path. So the Dharma is teaching about the mind. That's why everybody's saying, is it a religion? Is it a philosophy? Is it a, what is it? Where does it belong? There are no gods. But it's about our mind. Teaching us directly how to deal with our mind. Teaching us directly the causes of suffering. Teaching us directly what's the reason all these problems are arising. What is the reason for my pain, for the pain in the world? What can I do to overcome it? What can I do to free myself? And how can I try to make the world just a little bit of a better place? Or at least not make it worse by my impact in the world, right? Because can we even manage that? If we look at our own life, then even that is very hard not to cause damage and not to, we don't have enough damage control. We don't have enough awareness, enough mindfulness, enough sort of, our mind is not tamed enough to avoid upsetting others, hurting others, getting into conflicts, getting into fights, seeing negativity, being selfish, always thinking about me. So if the Dharma can help us in that way, help us to manage our lives to some degree, that is already a step in the right direction. But so what I'm saying is that the Dharma is fresh, the Dharma is alive, the Dharma is new, and then at the same time it is ancient. It is from 2,500 years ago, and it is timeless and very, very precious for all these reasons. So it's very relevant in modern times, even though like we see that externally things change. Of course, if we were suddenly catapulted back in time to the 8th century, we might sort of stand out. we might feel a bit like out of place. We might not quite fit in. Because cultures change, external things change, many things change, but feelings about, like all the things the Buddha has talked about, attachment, aversion, ignorance, jealousy, the causes of suffering, and all, what are these attachment and aversions involved with these externals, like the duality that we're experiencing, that doesn't change. It is the same in the 8th century as it is now. People had families, people had friends and enemies and children and parents and did business and had their lives and had to look after their livelihood and look after each other, and there was wars and fighting and there was good times and bad times. So that is always the case during the centuries, just that the way it expresses itself is maybe different. So I'm saying this just so that you can have that, I think that's a really important point, especially if you have the text, because sometimes people feel that the language is a bit old, but the translation may be a little bit old-fashioned. So let's look on the life of Shantideva. Just briefly, I'll tell you about his life, because that's important in terms of, if you study a text, we need to know a bit about the background. So Shantideva, so he was a great bodhisattva, you could say, great scholar living, and he was born in the 8th century in the south of India, Gujarat. In a way, when you look at his life story, it looks a little bit like the life of the Buddha. He was born to a king and to a royal family. He was a very gifted child. He was a special child. And when his father died, he was about to be enthroned to be the next king. And so they had already gotten things ready with this big throne for him to be enthroned. But then it says that Shantideva had this dream. I don't know if it was actually a dream or a vision, but it's described like a dream. He had this dream where he saw this throne. He saw a big throne in the dream, and on this high throne, covered with brocades, he saw Manjushri. Manjushri, which is the embodiment of wisdom. You would say the deity of wisdom, embodiment, the manifestation of wisdom. So Manjushri was sitting on this throne, and Manjushri said to him, "My dear son, this is my throne. It's not your throne. This is my throne. I should be sitting on this throne. It is not right that you and I share a throne. It is wrong. You should not, I am your spiritual guide. It is not right that you and I have an equal place. You should, as a student, you need to sit lower than the teacher, right?" So when Shantideva, he woke up and he interpreted this dream to mean that he should not become king. So he renounced the throne, probably to the distress of the whole kingdom, but he became a renunciant. He wandered. And he anyway did not really wish to become a great king. So he left and he went to Nalanda Buddhist monastery and university. This was the greatest Buddhist university in India, in North India at that time. Many of the great masters that we study, they have studied there. He became a monk, and that's why he was given the name Shantideva. So he became a monk at Nalanda. So what happened then is that he was already a great being, but he had received teachings and he had also attained inner realization, but it was not obvious to the world. And in a monastery, if you are a monk or a nun, you have like 3 duties as a monk or a nun. It's like you have to study, you have to practice, and you have to work in the monastery. You have to contribute. You can't just sort of sit around on your laurels and say, "I understand it all already. I know already. I have read this before." Many people, many of these masters, they studied these texts again and again and again. So it didn't look so good for him in the monastery. Actually, the other monks, and they became fed up with him. They thought, who is this lazy layabout? Who does he think he is? He has no right to receive the alms and eat the food that is donated and offered to the monks and nuns, because he doesn't move a finger. He's just sitting around and wandering about and, not contributing in any way. And so they basically wanted him out. They were completely tired of him. And it's easy to imagine how this could happen, isn't it? They were sincerely thinking he was a bad example. He was not a good monk. So they decided to do something. And at that time, you could say that they did not have all of the different means that we have now to read and to know and to hear about things. They did not have internet. They didn't have, all the ways of telephone and communication that we have now. So all the great masters, they had to prove themselves. It was not enough you could say, just to be eccentric. It was not enough to display eccentric qualities and live in the monastery and sort of maybe be a siddha and maybe not. You had to prove yourself. There are many stories in the life stories of the great masters of how they proved themselves. If someone said they were a tertön, for example, a tertön is someone who brings out treasures of Dharma. They would announce in advance that this would happen, and then a crowd would gather and they would have witnesses to it. Or they would perform miracles in front of people. So there were certain things that were required to be accepted as a great master. And obviously Shantideva was not really displaying or proving himself. So they wanted him out of the monastery. And they were deciding, like he was not intending, he was not sort of showing any wish to leave. He just looked like a lazy, useless character. And so they said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to embarrass him in front of the public. We're going to invite the public for like a big crowd for a big debate or teaching. We're all going to take it in turn to teach, and we will ask Shantideva to teach as well, and surely he will fail, and that will make him leave the monastery. So they decided to do that, and they erected this massive throne for him to sit on. So they had all taught in turn. And it does say in the story that not only they made this very high throne, but on purpose they did not put any steps, so it was hard for him to get onto the throne. But in the massive sort of throng of people, nobody noticed how he got onto the throne, but suddenly he was seated on the throne. So then they asked him, he asked them, he asked the other monks, so what would you like me to teach? Would you like me to teach something new or something old? Would you like me to teach something that you have all heard before or something new? And they said, we would like you to teach something new. Teach us something new. And so then he sat on that throne and he fluently taught the Bodhicharyavatara, this text. So it says it flowed off his lips, all these verses. So it is in verse form, in Tibetan, very clearly in verse form. And he taught about bodhicitta, and he taught about the 6 perfections, generosity, right conduct, diligence, meditation, wisdom, patience, all of them for hours and hours on end. And it said that people, instead of seeing Shantideva, they saw Manjushri. They saw him. So obviously this totally convince them that he is more than his appearance. He is a great bodhisattva. He has great qualities. He has great knowledge. He has great wisdom. He has great understanding of his Dharma. So he became a great master. After this, it was like he was someone who had a huge impact on the Dharma. And he is seen as an emanation of Manjushri, so the embodiment of wisdom. So that's about Shantideva. So then about the text itself. It's called the Bodhicharyavatara, or for short, Bodhicharyavatara in Sanskrit. And in Tibetan it's called Shangchup Sempa Chöpala Jukpa, which is a translation from Sanskrit into Tibetan. So Sanskrit is said it was an Indian source of the Dharma, and it was called the language of the gods. So the Tibetans would translate, when they brought the Dharma to Tibet, they would translate from Sanskrit. And what it literally means is entering the activities of the Bodhisattva. Shangtup Sempa, or Shangtup Sempe Chöpala Jukpa. Jukpa is entering. And Shangtup Sempa is a Bodhisattva, and Chöpa is activities. So literally it means entering the activities of the Bodhisattvas. But in English, the book is called The Way of the Bodhisattva. So that's the title. And what's good to know is that the text, so it's not as if Shantideva was just sort of saying whatever came to his mind. It was very structured, it was very clear, and it was very, following a particular outline. And it follows the little verse that you could say is in essence the teachings of the Bodhicharyavatara, which we chant at the end in the dedications, which you will have on the back of your prayer page where you have the dedications. It's a verse that says, "Precious Bodhicitta, may it arise in those in whom it has not arisen. Where it has arisen, may it never decrease, but grow more and more. Shangchup Semni Rinpoche, Mache Panam Chejo Chik, Chepa Nyampa Mepa Dam, Kong Ne Kong Du Pelwar Sho." So that verse encapsulates the whole text of the Bodhicharyavatara. And it's basically, that there's 10 chapters in the text, and they follow this verse. And the first is on generating. Firstly, it's on generating bodhicitta, and then it's on how to prevent bodhicitta from weakening, and then it's how to develop and intensify bodhicitta. So it explains how to train in bodhicitta through these 6 perfections. That's the essence of the text. And that's where today, a few chapters, like in the text itself, you could also say it's in these 4 parts. And today we're looking at the first part, which is about the benefits of bodhicitta, and how that is taught, how in different examples, and the classification of bodhicitta. So as I also said to you, is that we are not going to go into that text. I'm just going to use a few verses that we can follow. So we have that kind of structure of the text, but I would say that it won't be doing Shantideva it won't give full credit, of course. It won't do him any favors that I am just picking and choosing a few verses here and there. But I felt that this is how we can manage to have a sort of a meaningful course. So first of all, I just wanted to look at how, the classification of bodhicitta and the definition of bodhicitta. So we talk about, and I know that many of you are familiar with this, but just a few of you may not be. So we talk about ultimate and relative bodhicitta, right? ultimate and relative bodhicitta. Relative bodhicitta is what we are all experiencing in terms of myself and my world and my feelings and the life around me and others and duality and everything that arises out of that, all of the different ways we generate attachment and aversion and ignorance. There's three root pleasures. So the three main causes of suffering: ignorance, attachment, grasping, aversion, rejection, and how we are constantly chasing after things we like and we want, and we are trying to avoid the things that we don't want. It's sort of like I'm explaining it in a super simple way, but when we look at our own life, we can see that this is what's happening. And that's, of course, how we should be using the Dharma. When we study a text like this, we should be using it to look at my own life and my own experiences and see, well, how does that relate to me, and how can I fit this into my own life? How do I fit into this? And does that really make sense in terms of my own experiences? This is how we can benefit from the Dharma. So we talk about relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. Ultimate bodhicitta is said to be from the first bodhisattva level. Like we have, the beginning of great realization is what you call the first bodhisattva level. And there onwards, you could say this becomes part of the ultimate bodhicitta, meaning non-duality, meaning great freedom, meaning great realization and understanding, wisdom and compassion, great qualities basically. So we divide it into this relative and ultimate bodhicitta. And at relative bodhicitta we have the aspiration and the application bodhicitta. Aspiration meaning this wish that we have to generate motivation, positive, proper, pure, wholesome motivation for our own life and for our life to become meaningful and for our own path. And an application meaning that we put it into practice. It's not enough to think about it. It has to start with thinking about it. It has to start with a motivation. Everything starts with the intention. Everything starts with that first seed of motivation and intention. But we need to apply it and put it into practice, which is the application bodhicitta. So that's a summary of it. And what the text really tells us is how rare this is, a bodhicitta, how rare and precious it is. And then it gives you many examples later on in terms of the benefit and how to think about bodhicitta. And I think it's important that we include this because this is what the text is about and how to develop it. So it's saying, and it's quoting the Avatamsaka Sutra that says that if we can develop this aspiration bodhicitta, meaning this mindset of wanting to liberate all beings, the mindset of wanting to develop enlightenment in order to also be able to help others and liberate other beings, then this is something as rare as a star at dawn. It's something like really, really rare. And then even more rare is to apply it. Even rarer is to put it into practice. And then, of course, the text goes on to say that millions and millions of people study the Dharma and study teachings on bodhicitta. So then what we all need to do is say, well, have I genuinely developed aspiration bodhicitta? And we might come to the conclusion that sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not there. It's not constant. We don't have a constant, altruistic motivation. It is very difficult. In order to have that, we have to have great stability. But also in terms of our relation to the Dharma, we are advised to think and look at our own motivation in terms of our study and in terms of our own motivation is how much are we practicing for short-term benefit and how much are we practicing for really long-term, next life, future lives, and with that true bodhicitta, or how much are we practicing simply to praying for good fortune in this life, praying for our families to find a good job, or for finding all the good conditions, like short-term worldly benefit, which is also not a bad thing. It is not something we should not pray for, but it is like a very, very, it's not really what we would say the whole complete aspect of bodhicitta. We need to think much vaster than that. If we only have selfish, limited motivation, it's not really what you would define as bodhicitta. So the definition of bodhicitta is that one seeks Buddhahood of complete enlightenment in order to benefit others. And it is that, what you say is that it has two aims. Bodhicitta has these two aims. It is not only compassion. It is not only loving kindness and compassion. It's what sometimes people think, compassion, that's bodhicitta. It is compassion and wisdom. So the compassion aspect is where we're saying, for the benefit of all beings. And the wisdom aspect is saying, I will attain Buddhahood. Buddhahood, the focus on Buddhahood is the wisdom aspect and of my own enlightenment. In order to, I will achieve enlightenment. It focuses on enlightenment through wisdom. And it focuses on benefiting all beings through compassion. So it's the union of compassion and wisdom. And when we look at the Dharma, it always tells you, what is the Dharma? You say, what is the Dharma in a nutshell? That's what it is. It's a union of compassion and wisdom. We cannot really easily have one without the other. Well, we can, but it's not very, it's like, it's limping. It's kind of like, it's like we are. Or actually one way I saw somebody said it, it's like driving in a fast car, and you really ought to have wisdom as a driver. Compassion should be in the seat next to the driver. Compassion should not be in the driving seat, and wisdom should not be in the back seat, on the trunk. Sometimes you throw wisdom in the trunk. And then you got, in the driver's seat, you got compassion. Next to you, you got right conduct. And then you think, okay, press the speed pedal and go, we're okay on the spiritual path. And then we crash. Because wisdom is the most important. Wisdom has to be in the driver's seat. If we say, well, I'm going to be such a good person, I've become a Buddhist now, I'm going to go out and I'm going to help the whole world. And we end up getting into a lot of trouble, isn't it? Nobody wants our help. They haven't asked for our help. We impose ourselves on others. We tell others what they should do, like in the one in the driver's seat, like right conduct. That's good, that's right, that's wrong, that's no, you mustn't do, yes, you have to do. We have to have wisdom, really, to drive. At least we have to have these two, wisdom and compassion together. And not just one. I think it's Trungpa who says we become very irritating. We start irritating all our friends if we just have this compassion, or we just try to develop compassion, but we don't have some intelligent awareness. Wisdom is a very big word, isn't it? But you say intelligent awareness. Some kind of sense of what's out there as well. Some kind of sense of what's right and what works and what doesn't work. So, union of wisdom and compassion is what you could say constitutes the two aims of bodhicitta. Constitutes bodhicitta. We need that. And so, how do we then? So aspiration bodhicitta, so application bodhicitta. So we have this aspiration, the motivation, the wish. Then the way we apply bodhicitta, or the way we try to live our life as miniature bodhisattvas, as people who are embarking on this Mahayana path, or trying, at least wishing to practice a Mahayana path of a vast mindset and wanting to think of all sentient beings, all beings are my mothers, every single being, all my enemies, I love them. How am I going to practice this? How am I going to apply this in my life? How am I going to generate this and live this life of a bodhisattva? So what the text is telling us is every single bodhisattva applies themselves through these 6 perfections. This is the application bodhicitta, is through the 6 perfections. And then that is what the text deals with. The whole text is about these 6 perfections, the way of the bodhisattva, the entering the activities of a bodhisattva. How? Through the 6 perfections. So training in the 6 perfections. That is what it's about. So I think we have to have a break around this time. So you may, I didn't tell you at the beginning, you'll be relieved to know that you will have a break. And we'll come back please come back at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock we start again. So we'll see how far we get. So we will just have to take it as however the speed goes. But I want to apologize to all of you because it's very cold in here. And next time, please bring a blanket or not a blanket. No, please bring a jacket or something. We have turned off all our heating. I'm really sorry to say that. The whole house has no heating. It's not only you who have to suffer, it's all of us who are suffering on a daily basis. We have, for various reasons we have had massive, it's a big house basically. So if you're cold, please wear your jackets, wear warm clothes. We might have a few blankets around if you need it for the next session. Please ask us, Then we'll just do a short dedication because I want you to try over this period to become familiar with this prayer. So we'll just do the 2 first prayers of your dedication. Sanam deye tamche sipane topne nyepe danam pamchene Jega naje balab tupai sipe sole dolwai sho samsho semsho rinpoche mache panam jejochik chepa nyampai me padang kone kondur pelwa sho. Palen save lama rinpoche dage chiwa pende den shula kaden jemba gone desonde kusondo jinga dosa doso. Okay, so I want to talk to you about the function of these 6 perfections. So what I was saying before is that all of the activities of a bodhisattva are contained within the 6 perfections, right? So if we are someone on the Mahayana path, I mean, I don't know if any of us would really call ourselves bodhisattvas, but we are following, or we're trying to follow both the Hinayana, Mahayana and Vajrayana path, actually. So Tibetan Buddhism is all of these three together. Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. For myself, I think I'm practicing Hinayana really most of the time. You know, I don't have a vast, super motivation. Can you all hear in the back, by the way? Are you all okay in the back? Yeah. But since we are aspiring, you could say we're aspiring, right? We're all aspiring. Who wouldn't want to be a great bodhisattva? To me, that means, you know, someone like the Karmapa, someone like Guru Rinpoche, or who knows, Nelson Mandela, Jesus. I mean, there are all these great beings who have been in the world, who have done a lot of benefit for others. If we could even come close to, you know, attaining or what they obtain, or what you call like the results that they had in their life, how much they were able to benefit others, what a big positive impact they had on the world. I mean, not everybody will agree about these different names, are just, you know, off the top of my head. But who wouldn't want to be someone who would, not because we want to be famous and great and etc., but because it's such a, what better could we do than that? What more meaningful could we do than that? Someone who is really capable of making a positive impact in the world. So it says, in terms of the Mahayana teachings, as aspiring bodhisattvas, all of the training of a bodhisattva is contained within these 6 perfections, and us as aspiring bodhisattvas, we should try and, for our own benefit and for the benefit of others, to apply these to the best of our ability. And that will help us and hopefully have a good impact on others. We are not going to be able to save the world, liberate other beings until we have liberated ourselves. But as I said at the beginning also, it will stop us from making the world a worse place. It will hopefully take us in the right direction. But it says about these 6 perfections, the 3 first are about giving us a good life, in a good worldly life, you could say, and the others about a good spiritual life, a positive spiritual life. So we would want both. We would want to have a good life here and now if we can. So in terms of this, the function of these 6 perfections, or parameters, so generosity, they come sort of in that order. Generosity is said to be the easiest one. So I'm just going to give you a little overview of the 6 perfections because these are mentioned again and again. So generosity is, if we practice, you could say the function of generosity is to develop contentment. A content mind, content mind is a sort of a happy mind, isn't it? If our mind is content, it's not the sort of happy kind of mind, or what we might think, oh, this is happiness. It's not that kind of happiness, but it's a mind at peace. It's a mind that is not striving and grasping and always wanting something different than what we have right now. Things are okay. Things are good when we're content. They're just the way they should be. We don't want them to be any other way than just the way they are. That's a great place to be, isn't it? In all aspects of your life, if you could feel that, if you could feel contentment in your state of mind, contentment with yourself, you're happy with who you are, you're happy with the way things are, you're happy with your relationships, happy with your job, happy with whatever. It's like we have contentment. So it says if we want to develop contentment, we should train in generosity. It's not only about just giving food and giving clothing to the poor or giving money to charities. That is for our benefit. Of course, if we give a few pounds, that will also help someone. But we should know what does it... I am always the one who benefits first from my own spiritual practice. I am the first benefactor. So I will develop that less craving, less possessiveness, less attachment, less selfishness. This is the function of generosity. And all of it is important. It's important that we give to those who have less than us. It's important that we share, whatever way. Then there are many different ways of looking at generosity, but we have to remember that we are only aspiring bodhisattvas. So what we are really doing now is working on our own mind so we can become great bodhisattvas who can reach that first level bodhisattva and really have an impact on others. We can really help others. We can attain Buddhahood, so we can benefit others. This union of wisdom and compassion. Then we could say we are actually benefiting others. But until then, it's still about me, I mean, our life is all about me, right? It's all about me, nothing else. And on the spiritual path, it's also about me, but in a good way. It's a good way to approach it. We cannot we should not expect something else, but we do also have to recognize that we are not capable yet of saving the world. And we have to recognize this, that, I am practicing, I'm training through this application bodhicitta on the relative level. I am training to become a great bodhisattva, and I am benefiting on my path of training initially. And then my most close surroundings will also hopefully feel the effect and think, wow, she's much less angry, she's much less jealous, or he's much more peaceful, etc., etc. There'll be some benefit there. So I think that's important to say. But then it says, okay, as we become less possessive, less grasping, less sort of having to have it for me, we allow others, then we come into the next, or it becomes easier, you could say, because it's not necessarily that one leads into the other. It's more that as our possessiveness and selfishness diminishes, it becomes easier to have this right conduct, the next parameter, the next perfection. Right conduct with less grasping. We have better relationships, so in that way it will improve our relationships. So, generosity also, it does actually say, if you want to become rich, you should be generous. In terms of karma, if you feel you are poor, just give whatever you have, and it's a strange logic. Maybe you become rich in your mind, I don't know. It doesn't mean that you necessarily will win the lottery or something because you are becoming very generous, but in terms of you have this inner richness, yes. And then in terms of your right conduct, as our kleshas maybe become more tame, then we have this benefit of more harmonious relationships, more harmonious environment, easier to have good conduct when we are not ruled by selfishness, when we are not ruled by clinging and attachment, isn't it? We can make clearer choices. So it's sort of explained like that a little bit, that one leads into the next. And then as we have more self-discipline out of this right conduct, then patience becomes easier, the next of the perfections. So with self-discipline, where we don't just give in to our wants and our aversions, we don't give in to the kleshas, then it becomes easier to have the sort of like as a foundation. Then with the right conduct, then patience develops easier. Self-discipline. And then diligence also, when we have less resistance, less attachment and aversion. In a way, the kleshas, of course, are attachment and aversion, of course, are what blocks us and what pulls us away from so many things. But if you think of diligence, if you think of why do so many people say that it's very difficult to have a regular meditation practice? Why do so many people feel that initially they can do it, but after a while it becomes hard? And because there are other things, like the mind is avoiding, the diligence falls away, our interest, our joy in Dharma is replaced by our attachment and our grasping for other things. So the diligence is the enthusiasm, our interest, our enthusiasm for Dharma. So that should hopefully grow. The more we engage with Dharma, then the more enthusiastic and inspired we become, because we see the benefit we can have, we experience the benefit. As we experience the benefit, we will want to do more. It's like you get the nourishment from the food, so you want to eat. So we need diligence in all our aspects of life. We need diligence in our daily life. We need diligence in our Dharma practice, our spiritual life. And then, of course, we need it for meditation. The next of the perfections. So the perfection of meditation, training the mind. If we don't have diligence, it becomes very hard. If we have lots of attachment, lots of aversion, if we have all sorts of preferences, lots of anger, rather than patience. So we need to be patient with all the different sort of conditions that are not necessarily perfect. We don't always have perfect conditions. We cannot expect to have perfect conditions. So we need to sort of make peace with our conditions through patience. And then practice becomes easier. Diligence becomes easier. And then our mind becomes focused. Our mind becomes free from distraction. Because when we look at what is distraction, it is again all the kleshas that are pulling us in all directions. So concentration grows, our one-pointedness grows, it will become easier. And then out of that, with strong meditation, then gradually we can develop more understanding, more clarity, more awareness, wisdom will arise, more understanding of how our own mind works and how to be careful, and as we study, as we practice. And to eventually, with wisdom, it's that aspect that sees the nature of things as they are, seeing the nature of mind, seeing clearly this selflessness or non-duality, or ultimate bodhicitta. So there are many names for the same thing. So seeing like through taming the mind, you also say it's a shine and laktong meditation. So the shine meditation is where we are taming the mind, pacifying the kleshas, pacifying all the distractions, and where it's described that if unless we really work on that, pacifying all the distractions, which means developing this contentment of mind, developing this patience, right conduct, etc. Unless we do that, we will not have insight. Insight, which you could say is like a part of the wisdom aspect, the wisdom perfection. Without that, those first sort of without work on those first aspects, we won't have insight into the nature of mind, like just like nothing, or just like everything, you could say, just like everything that is reflected in the surface of any surface of water, whether it's a pond, whether it's your sink, or whether it is the ocean, unless that water is calm and clear and still, anything that's reflected in it will be distorted, right? Everything is distorted. So even if there's just tiny little ripples on the top of the water, tiny little breeze, and you look over and you see my face, is that what I really look like? Or you see anything else, I didn't know I looked like that, because we cannot see our own face. So everything is distorted. With a mind that is ruled by kleshas and obsessive thinking and our habitual patterns, which is like these waves, or the wind that creates the waves, then our experience of life and everything around us will be distorted. So we all have different experiences, right? We all, in one situation, we will have completely different experience of the same situation. See something different, hear something different, to some degree at least. Because of that, this distortion of our constant mental, like, do we ever stop? And so it said with insight, or with wisdom, you would say that surface has become very clear, very calm, very settled, shine, resting in peace, very content, no struggle, no striving. And then when we look in that calm surface, you can see exactly what's there. There's only one moon. There's not like many, many moons. We don't see a distortion. We just see things as they are. You could say that's the wisdom aspect, this ultimate nature, seeing things as they are, seeing the nature of things, the nature of mind, the nature of reality. And so we can see that in that way it is important to work through stages, and there are many different aspects to these stages, but even though these 6 perfections might seem like, they are going step by step, one then the other then the other, of course we have to try to, as much as we can, to practice all of them alongside each other. But it's easier to be generous than it is to be wise, right? It is easier to be generous than to have clear concentration sometimes, to have a very stable mind through meditation. But we need to work on all of these. So this is what is taught, how to develop this. The ultimate goal is develop this wisdom of selflessness and compassion, or just selflessness and compassion, wisdom and compassion, but training in that through the 6 perfections and applying it to ourselves. So in the Mahayana teachings it says that this is the single path that was followed by all the Buddhas, past, present and future. And we think, we thought there was only one Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, but there is said to be 1,000 Buddhas. So all the Buddhas, any Buddha that appears, that's what they will teach. That is the heart of all the teachings, this union of compassion and emptiness. Wisdom. They all walk the same path. Buddhas of the past, Buddhas of the future, Buddhas of the present. So we say there will be 1,000 Buddhas. Sakyamuni was the 4th Buddha. He turned the wheel of Dharma. The Dharma teachings spread, expand. Eventually, like all things, they disappear. There will be a time when there is no Dharma available in the world, which is a strange thought to us now. We think, at least there must be some scrap of a text or a little broken statue in a museum somewhere. Even that is gone, like not even the knowledge of a Buddha. So that's a long time span in between each Buddha. All memories of the Buddha will be gone. It will be then the next Buddha appears and turns the wheel of Dharma. So in that way, they say the compassion Mahayana path is the heart of the whole path. That without that, it becomes the Hinayana path becomes maybe a bit like cold. The Vajrayana path becomes just like a mask. There's a Hinayana path where we normally relate the Hinayana path to right conduct, following according to Shila, the vows, the way of living. But that without, if it's limited to that, it becomes limited. And if the Vajrayana, which where we talk about identifying with Buddha nature in terms of the Vajrayana practices, if they are lacking the bodhicitta, it becomes like a mask. We're wearing a mask. We are visualizing ourselves as Chenrezig, visualizing ourselves as a deity, but without the compassion and emptiness, it is lacking the heart. So that's why it says we should we should develop bodhicitta, we should rely on bodhicitta, we should follow the Mahayana teachings, not just for short-term gain, but for long-term. We should let go. So what the key point is, letting go of narrow self-interest and develop a more broader view. Recognize what is good for self and others through practicing these 6 perfections. So then maybe we're actually getting onto the text, which is then how the text, but you don't have to worry, you don't need the text as such, because I'm just going to mention a few things. So the text always starts with whoever writes or composes, or it's not really composing, but it's more like expression of their realization, but it starts off with paying homage. So they always pay homage to their teachers, pay homage to the Buddhas, pay homage to the 3 jewels, because that's the ultimate source. So Shantideva also starts by paying homage to all the 3 jewels. He makes a commitment to compose a text, or to you can say compose the text. And then there's an expression of humility, saying sort of like saying, I don't know very much. Like if you hear the great masters, they always say, I don't know very much. I haven't really studied very much. I haven't really done very much. So, an expression of showing modesty, showing humility, and overcoming pride. So, intellectual pride, especially if someone studies a lot, is also important. We might think that we have studied so much, we have read so much, and we know everything. It's actually great danger in that attitude. So humility is always extremely important. So it's like he's setting an example. He's setting an example, saying how we should always pay homage to the 3 jewels. We should always make a commitment to complete something if we start it. Commitment to compose a text. It means you don't give up halfway. You carry on till the end. And so he's presenting this teaching for the benefit of all it was said there was like 500 great masters present at that time when he taught it, and in all future generations. So it's not only for those who were present at the time, but it was taught for all the future generations as well. And then the last thing is he says he's generating enthusiasm and joy in order to also complete it. So these first 4 verses are saying, like, this is what we need in all aspects of our activity on the path. We need that faith and commitment, humility and enthusiasm. And then the main text goes on. It also in the text, which is something I will go over very, very briefly, but it mentions, of course, precious human birth and impermanence. And so Shantideva is warning us not to let our opportunities go to waste. And I wanted to just read to you a short verse by Atisha that is mentioned in the commentary. It says, "This life is so short. There's so many things to know. You have no notion of how long you have to live. So just like the swan that strains milk from water, you should pursue the goal that you set yourself. It's like you should seize the moment in terms of Dharma." So he's saying, things are impermanent. This life is so short, so many things to know. It's like endless, so many things to do, so many things to focus on. So we're so busy. I mean, our lives are busier than ever, right? Compared to the 8th century. I wonder what kind of speed they had. Now things are so fast, Our attention span is so short. That's why I said earlier, like, if you're listening online, watch your hands. Like Akon Rinpoche always said to us in retreat, he said, in retreat, something like, hold your hands together. Like otherwise, before you know it, you'll be writing. He even said you'll be knitting. He said he had heard of somebody who had spent a long time in retreat and she had knitted a whole wall decoration. So those of you, please, on the online, don't do knitting. Remember, life is short. But what I mean is, like, because now our attention span is so short. And when we're sitting here together, I would notice if any of you were knitting, and I would notice if any of you had brought your tea in here and you were sort of quietly sitting and having a little cup of tea or finishing off your cake. But I can't see that online. And the thing is that now it's just like at the press of a button. We just have to do that, and things change. Even like little Mero Yeshe, she's learning how to press the buttons now. She's 7 months old. So that's it. Like, it's so instant. Everything is instant for us. I'm sure it was not so instant in the 8th century. Instant, everything, So our minds, we always felt like very short attention span, and we have to go on to something else. And it's a craving. It's entertainment. We have to recognize it for what it is. The reason that the Dharma often points out faults is because if we don't know what is the mistakes we make, if we don't know what our faults or weaknesses are, we cannot change them. If we don't know that, if we don't see our own attachment, our own jealousy, our own aversion, etc., our own judgmental mindset, our own habits, how can we change them? We don't believe when other people point them out to us. So we have to see them ourselves. But the Dharma tells us how to look. So this verse by Atisha is telling us, this life is so short, so many things to know. On your little tiny phone, you have so many possibilities, so many buttons to press, so many instant satisfaction of knowledge that people now, they call it doom scrolling, and you just go like that, like hypnotized. Hypnotized. 2 hours are gone. Our whole life could be gone. How much of our life, if we count it, how much of our life is gone doing silly things like that? I mean, it's not the only silly things we can do. There are so many ways we can waste our time. That's what he's telling us. You have no notion of how long you have to live. So you should strain the milk from water. You should have your priorities. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to do. This is beneficial. And maybe I'll just do less of that. I might still do a little bit of this, but I'll do a little bit less and more of that. And then I will benefit. So pursue the goal that you set yourself. Seize the moment, but you must pursue goals, and you must have some clear goals, because otherwise time just goes. Like what we had this what we call it, in a day of embracing death and dying. Some of you, I'm sure, were there, and some of the past, like days on embracing death and dying, which was like all different talks about death and dying and trying to impermanence, getting familiar with impermanence, etc. We had one exhibition in the yoga room, which was one year, I'm thinking especially of that year, where we had all different coffins, empty of course, in there, but people could go in, and it was like a meditation room. There was different, like little exhibitions. There was all different skulls on one, not real skulls, all different skulls on one table. Some people had made like all different sizes. So sitting in there and contemplating impermanence. But what there was also, which I thought was really nice, is one little table, and it just had an hourglass. 15 minutes, I think, a sand. What do you call it, an hourglass? It's not a whole hour, but it was like 15 minutes. And you just sit and look at that sand. 15 minutes gone. Turn it on. Like that. And you see, this is my life. This is my life going. Just like that. That's a very good meditation. To really take that on board. Anyway, this I thought this verse is really nice. So we don't have a lot of time, so I wanted to actually read you from the text. So the first verse that we are reading is verse 5. It talks about the mind as a basis for bodhicitta. And Shantideva says, just as on a dark night, black with clouds, the sudden lightning glares and all is clearly shown. In the same way, through the Buddha's power, but rarely through the Buddha's power, in the same way, through the Buddha's power, rarely virtuous thoughts arrive. They are brief and transient in this world. So he's painting this image of a dark night full of clouds, but there's sudden lightning flares. And in that moment, that instant where lightning sparks, then you can see everything clearly. But it's very rare. It's just an instant, and of course it doesn't happen all the time. So Shantideva is saying that, like, what this is an image of our mind, of course. So this dark night there with the sky covered in clouds, this is our mind, obscurations of the mind, our lack of clarity, our ignorance, our lack of wisdom, I'm painting a very dark picture, isn't it? So, but the sun of wisdom doesn't shine. It's the middle of the night, full of clouds. Wisdom isn't really there in our life very much, is it? We cannot really say that we have great wisdom. We cannot really say that our mind is constantly filled with virtuous, positive, kind, compassionate thoughts and feelings. If we analyze or even observe, not even analyze, just observe our own mind honestly, then it would be like that lightning in the sky where you suddenly can see. For an instant we might have bodhicitta. For an instant we might have this great and overwhelming, all-encompassing bodhicitta, kindness, care, selflessness, or total, overwhelming compassion for others. But so, what Shantideva is saying is that these moments are virtuous thoughts. They are very brief and they are very transient. And that we should pursue them. We should grab them. We should say, this is so. Of course, it's like saying bodhicitta. This is what we should really be holding on to. If we are in the middle of this dark night, in the commentary it actually says we should be like a blind man stumbling around in the dark out in the fields, and he comes across a cow. He bumps into a cow, and he grabs hold of the tail of that cow, and he knows that the cow knows the way home. The cow will go home, so he just holds on to that tail and he follows. So we should be like that. If we can grasp a hold of, you could say the Dharma, you could say this whole idea of bodhicitta, if we can grasp hold of positive thinking, if we can grasp hold of this aspect of motivation of selflessness, generosity, patience, right conduct, diligence, meditation, wisdom. If we can really manage to bump into the cow, then if we can manage to come across the teachings on the Buddha and have interest and meet them, then we should really not let go. He's saying that you should not let go. You should never lose hold of it. You should grasp on very, very strong. So meaning with that mindset of, I will really practice the Dharma, I will really develop mindfulness and awareness and care. And in the commentary it's quite funny because it says like, don't ask your father, don't ask your mother, don't ask your teachers, just hold on for dear life and don't, like it says, recite the 3 fierce mantras. Whatever has to happen, let it happen. Whatever the situation is, it's fine. I really don't need anything. He says that should be our 3 fierce mantras, meaning all these other things in life that pulls us away from taming our own mind, we should let go of them because they are. We should instead hold on to this bodhicitta, because that is how we will develop inner peace. That is how we will develop contentment. If we can give up negative, unhappy, anxious, selfish impulses and instead develop positive attitudes, this is what it's talking about. Even if we don't call it bodhicitta, we talk about developing positive mind, letting go of anxiety, letting go of stress, letting go of depression, letting go of worry. Why? This is just thinking, right? So hold on to the essence of the Dharma, because that will pull us out of that dark night and back home to the farm, wherever the cow lives, the shed, and in that way, so he's saying, don't get distracted. Recite those fierce mantras and remember the benefit of bodhicitta. So this is about the mind as a basis for bodhicitta, meaning that we need to observe and we need to increase those moments of positive mindsets, positive thinking. And that he's saying that the strength of the goal of bodhicitta dispels that darkness of an ego-centered attitude. It dispels selfishness. So it purifies negativity. If we have the mindset of saying, I will work on my own, in terms of all these things we've just talked about up until now, and we want to overcome our own problems and obstacles, then he's saying this is the way to do it. Take hold of bodhicitta and don't let it go. Don't let that attitude go. Because the reason, the cause of suffering, that's the key point, is the cause of suffering is selfishness, self-obsessive mindset and thinking. I think we're coming to an end here because we have to stop 1:45. Do you have any questions at this point, any of you? Is there any burning questions? Just like burning questions?
Could you repeat those 3?
Yes. 3 mantras, the fierce. Recite your mantras. Well, it's attitude, it's not like you don't have to. And you have to understand the context as well, because otherwise you could take it the wrong way. It says, whatever has to happen, let it happen. That means let go of too much preference. It doesn't mean that you should not do anything, you should not, if you can do something to improve things in your life the way they are, you should do that. But it's about getting your priorities right. But it doesn't mean, we should take things to extreme unless we have real deep understanding of Dharma. So just making that clear. Then he says, whatever the situation is, it's fine. Contentment. We're content. Developing contentment. Whatever the situation is, it's great. What's wrong with it? Why are we always complaining? Why are we always so unsatisfied? This is the characteristic of the desire realm. The human attitude, the human realm is lack of contentment. We are always so unhappy. Never mind however much we have, is never right for us. So, whatever the situation is, try and be content. Think of what is really good. And the third one says, I really don't need anything. Less desires. I don't need anything. Whatever I have is fine. If ever you lose your suitcase in the airport, you actually recognize, I could have done without that all along. I never needed all that stuff in my suitcase. Now that it's gone, I'm okay with what I have in my handbag. Most people feel like that because you put all the important things in your handbag. And the rest, it's okay, it's gone. So it's that attitude that we need to develop. More contentment, less preference. And this, what he's saying, that we should increase these moments of positive mindsets. We should increase these moments of lightning, the way you can see everything. We should increase our positive thinking. Work on thinking positive. Work on in whatever way we can. So we have to observe our mind. If we feel upset, if we feel anxious, if we feel angry, if we feel unbalanced, what has caused that? It's our way of thinking. So take your mind in the right direction. Grab the cow's tail, but think positively. Okay, so I think we'll leave it there. And then next time we will look at some different examples of bodhicitta. So then we will recite the dedication, those 3 verses. I can find my prayer. And those of you online, if you would like to ever ask any questions, but like just if it's really, some things they get answered along the way, so you don't have to look for questions because sometimes it just becomes clear with time. But if there's something that you missed, you can ask. You can send us an email. Okay, let's see if I'm Sanam diye tam che se pa ne tom ne nye pe danam pam che ne che ga na je ba la tu pa ye se pe so le do wa sho sang chu sem ne rem po che ma che pa nam je jo che che pa nyam pa me pa dang kon e kon do pel wa sho ke wa. What is the third one? Sha pe ten pa dang kan yam yong la de se jong wa dang ta shen ma lu so sa drip jane nyo do san de sa la ke